completely neutral. And that's why, ladies and gentlemen, they basically argue the over-sexualization of the femininity, or etc., etc. But Yuki and Thomas has already substantiated you how actually masculinity has the complete domination against the femininity. So given that existence of imbalance between masculinity and femininity, that's the real context on this debate. So the fundamental argumentation of these three speakers has nothing, it's not so realistic and nuanced in the first place. Moreover, ladies and gentlemen, more interestingly, proposition somehow believes that the media has some coercive power to dictate those kind of successful figures' action. That's why that proposition they mentions, those kind of the successful figures will be coerced to act like a feminine, or etc., etc. How coercive it is. They just spend the real life and just working and just spend the daily life, and that's they really doing that. So, ladies and gentlemen, as long as the proposition side have never substantiated the existence of coercive power, the influence argument is completely meaningless. Moreover, ladies and gentlemen, the proposition side innocently believe that without doing anything, they can successfully nullify the gender bias existing in a society. That's why, ladies and gentlemen, basically they argue that the ability of the successful female figure that won't be assessed so fairly. Ladies and gentlemen, that kind of argumentation is completely based on the assumption that the society will be fair somehow. How? And to make the society fair towards the woman, opposition is here. Actually, they're countering the gender imbalance existing in a society, and they completely miss the nuance of the argumentation. No, thank you. That's why there's no reason for the prop side to win this grand final. So, I'm gonna sum up this debate with two criteria. Firstly, the acceptance towards the ability of the successful female figure, is it fair or not? That's the primary concern coming from the proposition side. And secondly, I'm going to examine the reaction of the society towards this action, whether this policy will empower women or not. So, before that, the several clarification, no. So the proposition side somehow said that women have to act so femininity actually to be successful because of the influence of the media, etc., etc. But we have to recognize how actually women are perceived in the society, and the opposition side already substantiated to you, and the masculinity is a prerequisite for not only for men but also for men to be successful, because those kind of norms has been created within the old boys politics inside the company or the politics, etc., etc. So the people, no thank you, the women having masculinity is already successful in the society, so those kind of the women don't have to protect themselves with the existence of this policy. We are particularly talking about the feminine persons, and actually by broadening the definition of the prerequisite to be successful. That's the nuance of the argument coming from the opposition. So, on to the first issue about the acceptance towards the society. The proposition side said, their ability is underestimated because they will be seen through a lens of femininity, and several responses towards the argument. First, no thank you. Why in the first place? Success comes first, and the media coverage follows. So those women have to be successful and to be actually broadcasted and actually to be on there. So those kind of success which is done with masculinity is already the prerequisite for the media coverage in the first place. So those kind of existence of gender lens never is not so strong things in the first place, because society recognizes how successful the women are. That's why the media focuses and broadcasts her. Moreover, ladies and gentlemen, proposition side never said how can we successfully divide the ability as a professional and ability as a female in the first place. Yuki has already told you how actually femininity is closely connected to the success of the female figures, and there's no response coming from their side of the house. And moreover, ladies and gentlemen, no thank you, those kind of artificial